haven't been living under a rock, you probably heard about K-pop Demon Hunters. Personally, I feel like I see something about this movie every time I open a social media app. Everyone's talking about it. And honestly, for good reason. But for those who haven't seen it yet, here's a quick summary. K-pop Demon Hunters follows a famous K-pop girl group called Huntrix, who are secretly demon hunters on a mission to protect the world. They use their voices as a weapon and are determined to seal the Hanman Gold, which will banish the demons for good. The movie has amazing animation, a great soundtrack, and a perfect mix of action and humor. It's really fun to watch, it's fast-paced, and it's surprisingly full of heart. Even if you're not into K-pop, it's a completely original story that's just really entertaining to watch overall. This movie marks a shift in the animation world, and it's coming from the same studio that gave us the Emoji Movie. Sony Animation isn't just keeping up anymore. They're truly setting the bar high, and the other animation studios are attempting to keep up and follow suit. With the release of K-pop Demon Hunters, Sony has done something that feels almost impossible in today's franchise-heavy world. They dropped a completely original, fresh animated film. Something like we've never seen before. It's not a sequel or a reboot. It's original, unique, and exciting. This is Sony once again flipping the animation industry on its head, and proving that original content, when done right, still has the power to capture audiences. K-pop Demon Hunters doesn't just look good, it looks different. And I mean that in the best, most exciting way possible. From the very first frame, you can tell that this movie isn't trying to blend in. It's not following a trend or mimicking what's already out there. It's confidently carving its own lane. The art style is vibrant, full of explosive color, fast movement, and expressive details that feel like they're leaping off the screen. It's chaotic in a way that reflects the energy of the world and the characters while still feeling cohesive. There are scenes that look like full-on music videos, then there are sequences that feel almost mythological, but none of it feels forced. Overall, this movie is really unique. Sony could have played it safe. Realistically, they didn't really need to take a risk on this movie. After the success of Into the Spider-Verse and The Mitchells vs. the Machines, they had every reason to just ride that wave. They could have copied and pasted what worked before like many animation studios do, but they didn't. In fact, they did the exact opposite. They let the artists create something that felt right for the story, and the results was a visual experience that feels completely one of a kind. But this movie doesn't just entertain visually, it innovates. Much like Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse redefined what audiences thought animation could be by seamlessly combining 2D comic book styles, watercolors, pop art, and cutout visuals, K-pop Demon Hunters is not pushing that boundary even further, but in a different direction. It doesn't copy Spider-Verse, but instead, it takes that spirit of experimentation that Spider-Verse had, and it runs with it in an entirely new way. One of the most interesting things it does is combine highly detailed 3D animation with the kind of exaggerated facial expressions typically found in 2D anime. The big, expressive eyes that practically jump out at you, or the dramatic, over-the-top reactions that show up in animes like One Piece, Demon Slayer, and many more. This fusion adds an emotional depth and a visual charm that 3D animation doesn't typically have. Like the scene where Huntrix first sees the Saja boys and their eyes turn into popcorn from the excitement. This was a creative way to add that anime inspiration and really make that scene stand out. Disney Pixar's Turning Red also dabbled in this as well, injecting its 3D character design with anime-style expressions, but K-pop Demon Slayers really took it to another level. There's just something about the way this film captures the energy behind each reaction that makes it feel more cinematic. In an interview with Animation Magazine, one of the directors mentioned that Sony doesn't have a house style. I found that to be interesting because many animation studios typically have a signature look and a set of design rules or templates that they follow for all of their movies. But Sony decided to essentially throw that rulebook out of the window and treat each movie as its own unique experience. Even after the success of Spider-Verse, they didn't go, okay, let's make everything look like that. Instead, they asked, what would the story look like if we gave it total creative freedom? And that's such a rare mindset in this industry, especially when most studios are afraid to gamble on anything that doesn't look like a guaranteed hit. K-pop Demon Hunters is what happens when you really bet on creativity, when you trust the artists to push boundaries and give them the space to take risks. And the best part is that this movie proves something that animation studios pretend not to know. People actually want original content. We always hear this tired narrative that audiences only want sequels, or that original animated movies don't sell, but that's not true. What audiences want are great stories that feel fresh, characters who haven't been dragged out to death, and worlds that haven't already been picked apart by 5 other franchises. K-pop Demon Hunters is proof of that. And honestly, animation as a medium deserves to take risks like this more often. Not every animated film needs a reboot, sequel, or spin-off. Not everything has to play it safe or follow the same formula just because it worked last time. When studios trust their creators and lean into fresh ideas rather than trying to recreate past successes, that's when we get something truly special. That's when animation becomes more than entertainment. That's when it becomes a powerful tool for storytelling, self-expression, and emotional truth. And that's exactly what this movie does with Rumi's story. Rumi was told by Celine to hide her demon patterns and never let anyone see them. It wasn't a suggestion, but a rule. A secret that she had to carry alone. Celine tried to reassure her that once the Han Moon was sealed, her patterns would disappear and she wouldn't have to hide ever again. That all the secrecy, shame, and cover-ups were only temporary. But what Celine didn't realize was how deeply isolating that would make Rumi. From the outside, Rumi looked like she was doing fine. She was surrounded by love and laughter, and she found a real sense of sisterhood in Zoe and Mira. They cared for her and included her. But no matter how close they became, Rumi never fully let them in, because underneath her clothes, she was hiding. And emotionally, she was doing the same by keeping the truth buried deep inside, never letting it rise to the surface. And she didn't do this because she didn't trust them, but because the fear that Celine instilled in her ran so deep. Rumi was half demon, and that, according to Celine, was something that needed to be hidden at all costs. Not just the patterns, but everything tied to them. Her bloodline, emotions, and identity. Celine believed that she was protecting her, shielding her from rejection, judgment, and maybe even danger. And while that's understandable, and Celine probably thought she was doing what was best for Rumi, it doesn't erase the harm that it was causing. Rumi felt like an outsider, and instead of feeling safe in her friendship and sisterhood, that feeling only deepened. She was present but not fully seen, surrounded by love but still felt lonely, all because she had to live in a constant state of emotional suppression. She wasn't allowed to be her full self. She had to tiptoe through every conversation, and every moment afraid of slipping up and being found out. And that pressure caused Rumi to crumble inside. Every time she had to put on a smile while hiding her truth, it chipped away at her. Every time she felt something too deeply, whether it was fear, sadness, or frustration, she forced herself to push it back down. And as we all know, you can only suppress your feelings for so long before they demand to be felt. And you can only pretend for so long before something in you breaks. And that's exactly what happened with Rumi. The demon inside of her that she's been told to hide, to fear, and to lock away started to rise to the surface. Not because she wanted it to, but because it had been buried for too long. It didn't come out in peace. It came out in anger, frustration, and pain. It came out as everything she had never been allowed to express. All the emotions that she had tucked away and tried to control were still there, but now they were amplified. And over the years, they had only grown louder, more intense, and more overwhelming, until finally they became too big to contain. And with this, her demon patterns began to spread. At that point, they were getting harder to hide. And just when it felt like everything was spiraling and the weight of hiding became too much, Rumi met Jinyu. And for the first time in her life, she felt seen. Not the version of herself she carefully curated for others, or the girl who kept her sleeves long and her emotions in check, but her, the real her. The one with demon patterns etched across her skin. The one burdened by a legacy she never asked for. Jinyu saw her patterns. He saw what she was, and he didn't flinch or look away. He didn't act like she was something broken or dangerous. He just saw her. And that small, quiet act of acceptance changed everything inside of Rumi. Because up until that moment, she truly believed she was a monster, a creature that had to be hidden. She had internalized that fear so deeply that the idea of someone looking at her and not recoiling was impossible. But Jinyu didn't see a monster, and that alone changed everything. For the first time, Rumi realized that she wasn't as unlovable or disgusting that she had been led to believe. That her demon side, the part of herself that she spent years trying to suppress in silence, wasn't something that made her less. It just made her her. And someone could still look at all of that and feel something other than fear or disgust. Now, that's not to say Jinyu was good or perfect. He wasn't. He had his own secrets, motives, and complicated reasons to getting close to Rumi. And some of those reasons were entirely pure. There were ulterior motives beneath the surface and layers of manipulation and hidden agendas that Rumi wasn't aware of. But what made it so complicated, so human, was that along with those motives, there was something real, genuine compassion, a softness in his eyes when he looked at her, sincerity in the way that he listened. And Rumi could feel that. Even if part of her didn't want to trust it, she couldn't deny that it was there. Jinyu, for all of his flaws, gave her something that she had never experienced before. That feeling of being accepted even in the parts of herself that she's been taught to hide. That kind of validation, especially after years of shame and secrecy, was powerful. It made her question everything she thought she knew about herself. It gave her the tiniest flicker of hope that she wasn't alone. Hope that maybe her existence didn't have to be defined by fear or hiding. For Rumi, that was the beginning of something deeper. Not just with Jinyu, but within herself. One of my favorite moments that really highlights the shift in Rumi's and Jinyu's dynamic happens during their first real fight. In the middle of the chaos, there's this powerful, blink and you'll miss it moment that speaks volumes. When Jinyu clawed at Rumi during the fight, he unintentionally tore her sleeve, exposing her demon patterns that she worked so hard to hide. And his reaction wasn't what you would expect for someone in battle. He didn't mock her or use it against her. His very first instinct was to help her, to protect her. In that split second, Jinyu noticed the panic in Rumi's eyes and the way that she froze. And he quickly realized that her friends Zoe and Mira had no idea about her demon patterns. So without hesitation, he jumped into action and covered her markings for her. That moment told me everything I needed to know about Jinyu's character. Because in the middle of an intense fight, his priority wasn't winning. It was shielding Rumi's secret. It was an instinct built on compassion, and it felt human. I honestly feel like in that moment, Jinyu saw himself in her for just a second. He's a demon now, yes, but he still has his memories. And those memories are fragments of the human he once was. He still carries that emotional residue, the ability to feel deeply. And in that second, something human in him recognized the fear in Rumi's eyes, because it was the same fear that he's carried in his own heart for years. The fear of being seen for what you are and being rejected because of it. It's those tiny, intimate details woven into the story that makes the movie so impactful. It doesn't scream for your attention, but when you catch them, they speak volumes. Moments like that one makes the connection between Rumi and Jinyu feel so authentic and emotionally grounded. It's not just a fight scene. It's a layered, unspoken exchange of understanding. And speaking of layered moments, another detail that hit so hard came during the rooftop train fight scene. Huntrix are singing Takedown, and on Rumi's verse, the camera focuses on her expression and we see her internal struggle as she sings the lyrics, "A demon with no feelings doesn't deserve to live." The look on her face in this moment is deep. It's like a flash of realization washes over her, because suddenly, those words aren't just lyrics. They're a dagger to her heart. Rumi is half demon, so if demons don't deserve to live, doesn't that mean she doesn't deserve to live? It's this quiet internal contradiction that hits all at once. And in that second, she sees how dangerous that kind of thinking is. How easy it is to echo hatred that's been passed down, even when it turns inward. But most importantly, I believe that's the moment that Rumi sees Jinyu differently. Because if she doesn't believe that about herself, and if she knows that she does deserve to live, then maybe he does too. Because underneath it all, Jinyu wasn't born a monster. He was a human once before, just like her. And that brings us to the heart of Jinyu's story. One that's quietly tragic and painfully human. Jinyu is someone who lives with deep shame and regret. Long before he became a demon, he was a man that made a choice that he would have to carry for the rest of his life. Desperate to escape poverty, Jinyu made a deal with a demon for wealth and status, and it worked. He was elevated, powerful, and respected. But there was a catch. His family, the very people that he loved and wanted to protect, weren't included in that deal. When he tried to bring them into the palace, they were turned away by the guards and treated like strangers. Like they were no longer worthy to stand beside him. And instead of fighting harder, Jinyu let it happen. Blinded by his own rise in status, he left them behind. And that decision haunted him. He climbed the social ladder, but lost everything that mattered in the process. And his patterns began to spread as he became a demon. But his memory stayed, and the guilt only festered. That's why Jinyu wants his memories erased so badly. He didn't want to feel the weight of what he had done anymore. The regret of loss and self-loathing. But then he met Rumi. And through her, he found something that he never expected. Redemption, connection, and a reason to feel again. She reminded him of who he used to be, and who he could have been if he had made different choices. And that's why in the end, Jinyu didn't hesitate to sacrifice himself to save Rumi. It wasn't just about protecting her. It was his final act of making things right. His way of making peace with everything he had done. And his way of finally being the man that he wished he could have been all along. Jinyu's story isn't just tragic. It's complex, raw, and deeply human. And his connection with Rumi is what gave him purpose again. There were two broken people bound by pain, shame, and identity, finding light in each other, even if it was just for a moment. This movie is just perfect in every way to me. From the moment it starts, you can tell it's just something special. The unique character designs aren't just visually striking, but they reflect the personalities and backgrounds of the girls in meaningful ways. Rumi's quiet strength, Zoe's fierce loyalty, and Mira's playful, free spirit all shine through, not just in their dialogue, but in the way that they're animated. Every gesture, every facial expression feels intentional. And what really makes this movie stand out is the beautiful, emotionally layered friendship between Rumi, Zoe, and Mira. Their dynamic feels real. And it's not just about them being close. It's about the way they support each other and grow. They each bring something different to the group, and you genuinely feel their bond deepening as the story progresses. Their friendship isn't treated as a side plot, but as an emotional core to the entire film. I highly recommend you watch this movie if you haven't seen it already. It's the kind of story that really stays with you. This movie really has something to say. K-pop Demon Hunters is deep. It's a heartfelt story told with a level of care, creativity, and cultural depth that we rarely see. You can feel the love that went into every frame, every lyric, and every emotional beat. This movie wasn't just made to entertain, but it was made to connect. It never sacrifices fun for depth, or comedy for meaning. It balances both so beautifully, bringing you into a world that's vibrant and hilarious, while also exploring themes of identity, shame, redemption, and friendship. That balance is what grounds the story, and what makes it feel real. And honestly, I wish that this movie would have gotten a theatrical release. I wish I could have experienced this world on the biggest screen possible, where every visual choice and emotional moment will wash over me in full. But regardless, I'm just genuinely grateful that I got to experience it at all. Because this movie really reminded me why animation matters so much. Animation is not just for kids. It's a medium capable of telling powerful and nuanced stories in ways that live action sometimes can't. And when studios like Sony are willing to invest in original content, take creative risks, and empower diverse storytellers, the result is magical. K-pop Demon Hunters didn't just deliver a great movie, it delivered a statement. It said, yes, audiences do care about original stories, and fresh ideas can succeed. This movie is a breath of fresh air in a landscape often dominated by sequels, reboots, and safe choices. The only downside about this movie is that it wasn't longer. I wanted more and I still want more. I wanted to live in the world a little longer, learn more about the characters, and hear more of the music. Because Sony isn't just making animated movies anymore. They're making art. They're pushing boundaries and proving that animation doesn't have to look or feel one specific way to be powerful. And most importantly, they're showing us what can happen when studios trust creators to dream big and go bigger. New stories still matter, and audiences are more than ready to embrace bold, creative risk when studios are brave enough to take them. I truly believe that Sony is just getting started. And if this is the direction that they're heading, the future of animation is very bright.